Why, hello there. So it's been a while, but today I wanted to talk about the state of Epic 7 and new character releases. So I love Epic 7, been playing for a long time now, really enjoy the game, but I want to talk about hopefully Smilegate hears some of these complaints. So I'm hoping to start a conversation about power creep and potentially how to kind of rein it in while keeping delivering awesome new characters that we really like. We really enjoy their aesthetics and think that they have really cool abilities. Like a lot of our characters that have been released lately have been really cool looking and have really great designs, but they also push the envelope and keep the meta evolving, but some of them do a little too much. And I think the balancing changes would be really good. And sometimes we get characters that just don't push it enough for what they do. And I think Epic 7 has this weird, is in this weird development area of, do we make a unit too strong or do we make a unit just always game crushing? And honestly, my preference would be I would rather them make units that are too weak. I think Bystander Haiwang is a really good example of a character that I think was released a little too weak, and I expect her to get a buff. I think she will get a buff, and I think whatever buff she gets will really bring her to the next level. Because honestly, I don't think she's that far from being really, really good. Just the fact that she's immune to all debuffs is a really big deal. It means that she has a place in the game. And the fact that her S2 is not a counterattack means that she gets around hard control like Mort. So I think that's really good. I think she has a place. I think her biggest problem right now is that she has a couple limitations. I don't know why she cares about light element on her S3. To me, that seems real bad, and I'd rather it just deal more damage. I think her S3 needs to be a solid nuke. A good example of this is going to be Celine, where she's very similar to Celine, where she has an activation for her S2, and then she does something. And her S2 nukes, and since it specifically targets, it's really good. So, kind of the thing that I'd want to change for Haiwan is I'd like her S2 to target, and I'd like it to target something specifically. Kind of like how Celine's S2, you can get the EE where it targets the, the person with the most attack. I like Haiyong. If she is going to target light units, I would really like this to target light units. I think that would be reasonable. And I don't know how good that would be, but I think that would be reasonable. And I kind of want her to have the ability to get buffs. Like, it seems an interesting trade off. I don't know. I think she needs just a little something, and then she will be really, really good. Be it a little bit more damage, be it specific targeting, be it her being able to have buffs, that way she can actually be a menace to society. She just needs a little help. I think that she is close to being really good and much more viable. I already think that she's viable in the game. I just want her to be a bit better. But I would consider her a good release. This is my seal of approval. If you have the ability to pull for her, pull for her. I do believe she will get a buff because people are upset, but I think she's really good. Oh, not really good. I think she's good. I think she does stuff. So this is the kind of character I would want released. So I'm going to talk about another character that I think hit the mark perfectly. So, New Moon Luna was a great release. I think she is exactly what you want in a character. So, first off, she's a mage, so she can have book. And this is great because her S3 can ignore effect resistance, and I just love that. I love when you remove RNG from a debuffer's kit. Uh, so for big debuffer, I have a couple opinions. For this, she dispels all buffs. I typically dislike this being on a debuff. I like abilities that either strip or debuff. The places where I'm okay with it being like this is when it's a non-attack ability. So I'm more okay with New Moon Luna having a dispel and a debuff because it isn't an attack. For an example of this, I have Ran right above, and I think Ran really pushed the envelope on his release because he dispelled and applied really significant debuffs. And on top of that, it was an attack that, if you build him right, he can do some crazy damage. And then he also sets up other people to do crazy damage. I think he's really scary for that. But New Moon Luna, her Silver Bang ignore effect resistance and not take an extra turn, I think that was a really, really good play. So then the rest of her kit is also really good. She just cycles really quickly and she does okay damage. And she also has a defense break on her S2, which I love that. That's great. I feel like she's a really good debuffer. I feel like she is awesome. I don't think she's overpowered. I think she just is a good unit. Because Seal was already in the game. We have it on other units. It's very rare. And I think it should remain rare. But yeah, I think she is exactly what you want in a character that is released. She is clearly focused to be a debuffer that goes fast and does little chip damage. And yeah, that's all she really does. You can play around it. You can have units that don't have S2s that can be turned off. You can have dispellers that will jump and then dispel. Uh, yeah, I think she's really solid. I like her kit. I think they perfectly got that unit right. Now let's talk about a unit I think they got wrong. Harsetti. I think they did too much with Harsetti. I would consider Harsetti a bad release. And let's talk about why I think this is a bad release. So right off the bat, her S2 is a game-changing S2. She is going to be first. Unless you have Zio. Zio's the only one who's going to be able to outspeed her. I think that is fundamentally a bad design. You're just I just dislike it. I also dislike that other units can't gain combat readiness on her turn. I think that makes sense for her team because that might be a little too power creepy, but it also really hurts the other side. And I really wish the other side had play into Harsetti because just giving a person turn one is massive. And if this was all I had complained about her, I'd be okay with her. The issue is that she once again has an attack that hits everyone as her S3 that decreases buff durations by 2 turns. Come on, guys. So your units don't have buffs for more than 2 turns. That's a strip. And she applies really good debuffs. So she stops your counterattacks and can't buff. And then on top of that, once again, it's an attack. It decreases. And it just does so much. It's HP scaling, it penetrates, applies debuffs, and strips. It just does too much. Honestly, if you made it so it didn't strip, I think I'd be completely fine with this S3. get rid of the strip. There's no reason this needs to have a strip. This is like Ran, where the strip is honestly unnecessary. Pick a lane, stay in that lane. We're not even going to talk about her S1 because honestly, I'm okay with the S1. It's all this S3. It does far too much. It's a full paragraph. It's too much. On top of that, she's a mage, so you can do stupid things like put an abyssal crown on her. Mages have great control abilities, and going first, it's just way too much. I think Harsetti is a bad character that should not have been released. I would love for her to get a nerf. I know Epic 7 doesn't do nerfs, and I also kind of like that. I think this was just a bad release. They did too much with her, and that's my stance on that. Mort. Let's talk about Mort and his rework. I love what they did for Mort. We can compare this to Harsetti, where her S3 throws the whole kitchen sink at everyone. Mort's doesn't. Mort has Fear, which is an incredibly strong debuff, but notice he doesn't strip. So if you have immunity, you're good. Sure, he ignores effect resistance, but there's ways around that. So I consider this S3 to be a good S3. I don't think it's overpowered. Uh, yeah, I just think it's really good. I think his S2 is crazy. I mean, look how long it is. It does so many different things. And it's game changing because it affects all heroes, removing their RNG and giving you RNG, which is crazy. It gives you a barrier and increased speed. I love that the barrier is a barrier instead of the anti-crit. I think this was perfect. So that makes me really happy. Then we have his S1, which classic decreased defense. It's good. He does a good amount of damage. He is difficult to remove. And he has a great debuff. And it doesn't strip. It's an attack that hits everyone, doesn't strip. That's what I want. If you're going to have a crushing debuff, don't strip. So Harsetti, don't strip. Just apply debuffs. Or just strip and don't apply debuffs. One or the other, I think, is perfect. Like, if we look back, way back in our memory banks, our openers, you know it's bad when I don't have them in here anymore. Do I still have them anywhere? This could be bad. Do I know I have them as an example? Did I click in the wrong place? The classic opener in Epic 7 history, Basar. Remember when this guy used to be the boogeyman in PvP? So his attack that hits everyone dispels all buffs and decreasing combat readiness by 30, and applying. I'll level him up a little bit. That's right, this is actually a leveling video. I probably didn't need to do that. Yeah, I could just click this. And unable to buff. This used to be the opener of the game. Because he stripped and applied a debuff, like this was really, really big at the time. Like way back. Man, I'm old. But that's how it should be. Like, he was unique at that time and he applied a mediocre debuff. Not a game-changing debuff. On top of a passive that stopped interaction to it. Because Basar doesn't have all of that. Basar just has cannot be buffed. So yeah, that's my big gripe. I think a lot of these units that hit everyone with their debuffs should do one or the other, as it forces you to create a team that works around that. for example, if you had Arceti who just does strip and cannot buff, I would be much happier with that, especially if it allowed you to still collect CR. So that way you could pull units like Requiem Rowana, for example. I think this is another one that I really like, where, I didn't actually know that she dispelled one buff. I didn't realize she did that. But she can't trigger a critical hit, and it's still not crazy. Like, she does so little damage. I'm kind of okay with her dispelling one buff, because it's not crazy. And increasing cooldowns by a turn, super strong ability. But yeah, this is much more of what I'd rather see than Harsetti, because you still have play around with this, and her passive isn't soul crushing to other people, it's only affecting her. So yeah, back to my Harsetti is too much. I just want her to not have everything in her kit. We can move along from that. I know I'm just beating a dead horse at this point. Good old Mort, love his new kit. He is awesome. Let's talk about two fire units that do too much in this game. We're going to start with Genua, as he was released earlier than Afternoon Soak Flan. So, Genua, oh my goodness, this guy was great. He doesn't die and he does so much damage. Like, he's crazy. I love Genua. But if he's stunned, he can't do his stuff. So I think that's a really good counter, is you just have a debuffer who can stun him, and then you're okay. And you can tank him with some units as well. Like, he's not an overpowering unit. He's incredibly strong, and there are units who really take him to the next level. But you have to bring those units with him. He's not just solo. So yeah, in my opinion, I like that. I think Genua is great for that reason. I think he hits the mark for what I want in a character. Same thing as, like, since we're talking about him, he goes with Sea Phantom Politis for the obvious reasons of she gives people rage, and she debuffs and strips. Man, she's just a great opener. And once again, I'm okay with a unit like her, because her S2 really only affects her and then changes it so that people don't gain resources very much, which I think is great. I think she effectively turns into a great debuffer, and she fits that role. By herself, she doesn't do a whole lot, but she really enables other people, and I think that makes her great. And Genua, by himself, is okay. But when you give him a team that supports him, he goes to the next level, and I think that makes him a well-balanced character, and I really like that. Let's talk about Afternoon Soak Flan. I think this is a character that does a little too much. Whereas with Genua, there is play around, and I'm happy with it. Afternoon Soak Flan does too much. I think her passive is too strong. Just having the ability of not being hit without any RNG. Like, even if I run Zahak, which is my designated hunter unit, he can't hit her because he has plus 50, and then you give him the artifact, make him a plus 70. She's red, and she has her passive on top of that, so she would effectively have 150 evasion against Zahak. So yeah, I still can't hit him. I get a 20% chance to hit with Zahak. I think that's, there is one unit who has better odds. Briar Witch gains a 70% hit chance, so we have a 30% chance to evade still. I don't like that. I think it's too much evasion. On top of that, she does so much damage. Oh my goodness. Look at this. She has defense break and a push. Her S1 pushes her and stuns, and is always a critical hit. So she's incredibly easy to gear. She's hard to dig out, and she just does a ton of damage. And if she lands any of her debuffs, like, who cares? But they're good debuffs, so you should care, and it's so annoying when it happens. But look at this. Like, this is not difficult to reach. I just tossed gear on her. And she's crazy. She does so much damage because of it. So I think this is a case of a unit doing too much. Does she also strip? She doesn't strip. Good. Not that angry about it. But yeah, does way too much. Those are kind of the units I wanted to talk about. Man, an easy way of bringing her in line is just not have her always crit. She would still be insanely strong if she didn't always crit. And man, just breaking the 50% evasion passive is so silly. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like removing RNG whenever we get the chance, but man, I remember my first time going against Flan. I hadn't read her kit ahead of time, and I remember just missing every time. I was like, oh wow, man, I'm just getting really unlucky. Then my second time I played her, I was like, wow, I've never actually hit her with anything. It's really kind of sucks. And then I read her, and I was like, oh, that's why. And that just felt bad. The one soul burn ignores effect resistance. That's a little strong. So yeah, these are just some of my passing thoughts. Leave some comments. Let me know what you think. I want Epic 7 to try and rein some units in. Like, there's some really cool abilities on these new releases. I just don't want our debuffers to strip and debuff with crazy debuffs. Again, if all you do is strip and you apply mediocre debuffs, I think that's completely different. Like, this is an opener unit, and this is an opener control unit. Like, there's a difference. I want to have an opener and then a control unit, not opener and control unit mixed into one. I think that is the biggest difference. And we can see, like, Silverblade here, she got her rework. Guess what? She doesn't strip with her stun and burns. She only stuns and burns. I think this is good. This is what I want. I don't want it to be too much. So yeah, thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Hopefully you guys all have a wonderful day. Please like, comment, tell me what you think. Until next time, guys. Bye-bye.